does it seem like it's taken a long time for job openings to get filled, coaches, or what's going on there? What's happening?
I would say yes, and I think that's deliberate. The league wants that. The league wants these things to be drawn out, and there to be more of a process. And part of it's the Rooney Rule, part of it's the rules on what you can do with coaches who are still in the playoffs. They've sort of tightened all of that up, and so I think the NFL wants this to take longer. If you notice, like the GM searches were taken care of pretty quick. There were two of them, Monty Ossenfort and Rain Carthon, were in place last week, and a big part of that is because playoff executives aren't affected the same way playoff coaches are. So if the goal was to do less affecting the playoff teams and give coaches who are still in the playoffs a fighting chance at these, I think that worked. That's a part of it. I think the other part of it is Sean Payton sort of hovered over some of these. And I'll tell you, Rich, I've said this from the start. Like, I wasn't convinced at the beginning of this that he was going to coach in 2023. I'm still not convinced he's going to coach in 2023.
Really?
I look at the situations that are out there right now. Does he want to marry himself to Kyler Murray? Does he want to marry himself to Russell Wilson? Is he willing to go to Houston? Is he willing to go to Carolina? I sort of look at like the landscape out there. And I know how much he likes living out there, like in your neck of the woods out there in Manhattan Beach. I think the Fox gig is a comfortable one for him. And, I think that there's some merit to the idea of just waiting for the right one to come along, and maybe the right one isn't there yet. I mean, you think about it, like we always have sort of thought of him as like the whiz kid he was. He's older now. Like he's in his 50s, and so this next shot he takes is could be his last one as a coach. And so I think that's part of the reason why he's taking his time here, and why I think it's a real consideration for him to go back to Fox rather than returning to the sideline.
And I say this with all due respect to the coaches that are currently in their spots. Is it possible he could sit there and go, well, man, I would love Herbert, but the Chargers weren't ready to make that move yet, and they might not ever be ready to make that move. And, Brandon Staley may go and take that, team to the heights that they hope he can take them to. And, man, I would do Dallas, but, they're not ready to do that. And they also don't want to flip the one to New Orleans. So let me get free of that contract. I'll hang in Los Angeles for a while. And are there any other? Is that as simple as that, or
Oh yeah, I mean he's not going to say it. I mean he's friends with Mike McCarthy. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
He's like pretty close friends with Mike. He doesn't. I know. Like I can tell you for a fact. Like he felt awkward about like how, and people aren't going to believe me when I say it, but I really believe it. Like he felt like awkward about how he was sort of hovering over all of these jobs over the course of the fall.
Right.
So I do think like. But that's the reality of it. The reality of it is, like, could there be better jobs available next year? Absolutely, there could be. And by definition, like, here's the thing. By definition, 90% of these jobs aren't going to be great because, otherwise the person who was in it would still be there, right? Like, normally,
right.
like most of the jobs that are going to come open are going to have serious problems that you're going to have to work through. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's certainly something that's got to be in the back of his head. It's the opportunity to stay in Los Angeles and work with Justin Herbert is there a year from now. Is that more attractive than what's out there right now for him? Maybe. Could Sean McVay walk away in a year and offer him the opportunity to stay in LA with the Rams? That could be something that could cross his mind. And then, like you said, like the Dallas thing, obviously he's been connected. He's very close to the Jones family. So, like, that's something to consider as well. Yeah. So I certainly think, like, it's almost like a team taking, like, a 2-year view of quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Like, where, like, if you're a team that's in the market for a quarterback this year, you're going to look at Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and Will Levis. But you also might have your scouts take a peek at Caleb Williams and Drake May, and I'll give you this, J.J. McCarthy next year, right?
Thank you.
You might have your scouts take that look at the second year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sort of that way. If you're Sean Payton, you got to look at this with a sort of long-term view because you might only have one more bite at the apple of coaching in the NFL.
And last one for you. This is a copycat league. The Bengals are back in the AFC Championship game for a second straight year. Well, what's with the Bengals not getting any phone calls
crazy,
asking for their DC and OC, right? Like,
yeah.
What's up with
I wish
that?
I had a better understanding. I mean, like I actually asked Zach about that on Sunday night, and I was asking about Lou in a room, in particular, and he was
Right.
like, he's like that one just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I think Brian Callahan's similar. I think anybody who's had a 5-minute conversation with Brian Callahan, the guy's got head coach written all over him. Both those guys are excellent tacticians. They developed young talent. They've helped turn the entire image. I mean, we think of the Bengals differently than we did 3 years ago. The entire image of a franchise has been turned over, and those guys are a huge part of it. So I wish I had a better answer for you, other than maybe their names haven't been in circulation for long enough.
Okay.
But I definitely think teams are missing the boat. Lou has got a ton of experience, is incredibly well respected and connected in the NFL. And again, Brian Callahan, all you got to do is call Peyton Manning and ask Peyton Manning about Brian Callahan. You'll find out. You know what I mean? I just, to me, it's Lou, you can pin it on the defensive thing, and I don't think that's totally fair either. But you can say, okay, the trend's to hire young offensive coaches. With Callahan, it's how is he not? With the Shane Steichens and Ben Johnsons and Ken Dorseys and all those other guys that are being talked about right now.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.